everybody, my name is Xuul. Welcome to the Kotor 2 Mod Showcase. Hello and welcome to my M4-78 EP Droid Planet mod review. This video is going to be a little bit different than some of my other Kotor showcases because it is a fairly substantial mod. So this is going to be a review a little bit more similar to my game reviewing series. I've only done one of those so far, so bear with me and please leave some comments below. There may be some spoilers in here, but I'm not going to try and spoil like a bunch of major things, but there could be some here, so if you want to play through the mod fresh, download it and play it now. Anyways, this video is going to be broken up into several parts. I'm going to give an introduction, a little bit of history of the mod, then I'm going to talk about the storyline of the mod, and then the gameplay. The gameplay is basically just going to be what you do in the mod and how the actual quest and things like that feel. I'm then going to talk about the voiceovers and then some issues that I did have with the mod and just some issues overall, I think, with M4, and then I'm going to give you kind of an overall conclusion and sum everything up. So without further ado, let's get started with the introduction. M4-78 was originally intended to be a planet for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 that the Exile needed to visit to progress their story. However, due to the time constraints placed on Obsidian by LucasArts in order to complete the game before Christmas, this planet was cut from the game fairly early on, and much of the content that was originally intended to go on this planet was actually shifted around and moved to other places. For example, the shuttle docking puzzle on Nar Shaddaa was originally meant to be on M4-78. And another reason that this planet was cut is because its plot was fairly simplistic and not very different from the Peragus mining facility section of the game. Well, there were many complete voiceover files that were found in the game's file by the modders. Overall, most of M4-78 was not completed, and there was much that needed to be completely reconstructed from scratch in order to build this planet. And that's why it is a separate entity from the Sith Lord's Restored Content mod, because most of the features in this mod are not so much restored as recreated and inspired by the files in the game. This also kind of leads to a little bit of the problems, but we'll get to that later. Now that we kind of have a history of why the mod was made, let's talk about the story. The story of M4-78 begins much as the story of every other planet in Kotor 2 does, the search for a Jedi Master. Only this story takes place on the dead world of Korriban, where the player character is seeking out Master Vash. However, unlike in the vanilla game where only a corpse is found, when this mod is installed, the player will find an audio diary detailing Master Vash's investigations on the Sith, and the discovery that the Sith have moved to a strange world called M4-78. Master Vash indicates that she is going to follow the Sith there, and thus the player character must follow the Jedi Master and track her down to M4-78. Upon arrival of this world, the player character finds that the world is devoid of all life, and only droids remained. Not only this, but the planet is also flooded with a deadly radiation, preventing any organic life from going down to the lower areas of the planet. The Exile then must send his or her droid companions down to the surface to try and shut off the radiation and figure out what's happening. From here, the Exile makes various discoveries, such as M4-78 being a mining colony where droids were sent ahead of time to prepare things for the colonists who never arrived, and the Sith's eventual arrival and acceptance by the colonists. One of the biggest problems that the Exile faces is that the planet's main AI core, M4-78, has been deactivated, and in order to speak with M4-78 and gain access to the planet's security systems and thus the ability to locate Master Vash, the Exile must find and speak with the two droid Archons, who are the only ones who can contact M4-78. Unfortunately, due to the strange happenings that involved the death of the colonists, the flooding of radiation, and the shutdown of M4-78, there is no way to contact these Archons. So a series of adventures and missions and things to try and figure out how to get a hold of these Archons, get them to work together to reactivate M4-78, the main AI core. And that's essentially the plot of the mod. Now, I'm not going to go much further than that because that would be obviously spoilers, and I think I've given a little bit too much. But you can sort of see where the settings have come from. So let's move on to the actual gameplay. The actual gameplay of this mod is actually fairly simplistic. The player character essentially just runs around the planet, speaking with various NPCs and completing tasks. Now, one of the problems comes in here right away in that the planet has some very large modules and there's a lot of walking around to do. This is offset by an escort droid who kind of acts as a fast travel system that's unlocked after the radiation is clear and the exile herself is able to make it onto the planet. Now, after that, you're going to have to basically walk around and start talking to a lot of different characters. Now, there's a lot less combat in the beginning and then a lot more combat later on, so it's not quite balanced, and a lot of the characters, well, all of them are droids, but a lot of them are fairly generic as well. There are some very memorable characters that I have to talk about, though. The first of that is the cleaning droid, who is absolutely amazing. I'm just going to play a little clip of him right now.
Please do not bother me, I have too much work to do. Our efficiency is decreasing rapidly as we speak. I am responsible for administrating all the cleaning activities in the colony, which includes dispatching assignments between the utility units and monitoring the whole process. Keeping the colony in perfect condition is not an easy task. We are always swamped with work, and the recent events only made it worse. So please, do not waste any more of my time.
Unfortunately, a lot of the other characters who give you side quests aren't quite as charming as this guy. However, it is still interesting, and it is about 2.5 hours long. At least that's how long it took me to get through it, although I did have to look up a guide because there are some areas in the gameplay that aren't quite streamlined, and you might not know exactly what to do. It's a little bit unfortunate, it's a little bit more of a run and talking kind of quest, but it is still something different, something unique, and it's fun to play. So now let's talk about the voiceovers. We've already heard one of them, but the voice acting in this mod is fairly important since there's a lot of characters who have been voice acting. The range of skill and professionalism in this voice acting is actually pretty far. There are some characters who are very well done, they fit the game and they sound awesome. I think the cleaning droid sounds pretty good, and there's some others that I am really big fans of that I'm going to play clips of right away, and there are some that sort of sound a little bit strange. They sort of pull you out of it. They don't quite fit into the realm of droid, and they're mostly just a modder talking with a slightly bad mic over the footage. Now, I don't want to be too harsh, but this is a fairly strong criticism that this mod has gotten. A lot of people in the community have stated that the voice acting is one of the reasons that they're a little bit hesitant of this mod, so I'm going to talk about it now. So I'm going to be playing a couple of clips and then talking about what I think of the different voiced characters. We'll start off with one of my personal favorites.
I govern the environmental systems on M4-78. This includes wastewater treatment, air quality, and habitat creation.
Now, I'm not sure who does the voice acting for ESO5 or if this was one of the game's remaining files, but this has got to be my absolute favorite voice. It really nails down the female AI voice that I'm kind of used to hearing from a lot of sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. It does it really well. It sounds robotic level, and it still has that little bit of charm and personality that you feel. It doesn't just sound like a person is talking, but at the same time, it's not just a boring, monotone machine. This is some really good voice acting in this mod. It's a shame, though, that you meet this character a lot later. Next up, we are going to take a listen to the research droid, who sounds really good in my opinion. But don't take my word for it.
I am in charge of planning and executing various upgrades into droid frames and functionality. I have recently received orders to redirect our efforts towards Project 42, and so my team is currently figuring out a way to incorporate new updates into the battle droid.
This droid again really seems to fit with the character. It looks kind of like a proper protocol style droid, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Again, this character is met a little bit later on, so you don't really get to hear him, but again, he's not right at the end. Next up, we're going to listen to the main AI of the planet, M4-78 himself, and then we're going to talk about him a little bit before getting into one last voice-acted section.
Welcome to the colony of M4-78. I am the supervisor of this installation and have been designated with the title M4-78.
Alright, right off the bat, you could tell this voice is a little bit different than the others, and I think that that fits, since M4 is sort of this monolithic AI that controls an entire planet. Now, well, in my head, I kind of pictured HAL 9000 a bit more than the deep baritone of this voice here. I do think it works really well. The one thing that I did kind of have a small problem with was the filter that was put over this voice, which to me sounded just a tiny bit off. I don't know what it was, it just sounded a little echoey, I guess. I'm not really sure what that is. But this last voice I'm going to show you is one that I need to spotlight because a lot of people who I have talked to about this mod are turned off by some of the voice acting, and I think this is the reason why.
It is an invaluable pleasure for me to welcome the very first organic in the colony of M4-78 since the arrival of the colonists.
Now, I'm going to preface this criticism by saying that I really did enjoy this mod, even though there was a few quirks to it. I mean, after all, it is a mod, it's a project of passion, and it's just amateur people working on it, so there are bound to be things like that. But the voice of this droid did definitely have some problems, and based off some of the feedback that I've gotten by talking to various members of the community who have played this mod, the fact that this droid, who has a very echoey voice with a filter that doesn't make him sound like a Star Wars droid at all, is so prominent and so close to the beginning of the game, actually makes a lot of people regret playing the mod. This, combined with a couple of the other issues I'll get into later, are some of my criticisms for it, but again, the mod is still really worth playing. Now, I know audio is very difficult, but there are different ways to clean up audio, make it sound a little bit better, and I think having really crisp audio would have gone a long way to make M4-78 shine that much more and become an absolutely amazing mod, even more than it already is. So yeah, the voice acting does definitely have some problems, but there are a bunch of other droids and they sound better, or some of them sound about the same, so it really does vary. But again, it's difficult. Now, one thing that I need to get into now are some of my criticisms. So let's start off with the first thing that I kind of had a problem with, and I know a lot of members of the community did, and that is the voice splicing. So let's take a listen to that now.
We've hit the ground. Something feels wrong here.
An adequate job, pilot. Perhaps here there is some trace of those who pursue us. I sense no one here. Sensing things is difficult.
It is the droid world. It is unknown to all but a few.
One of the first things the player hears when they get to M4 is the Spliced Dialogue. Now, while I think it is a really awesome idea, there's a couple of lines, especially that one Kreia says, that just aren't quite done properly, and it makes the whole thing sound hollow, empty, and awkward. This is again another issue I have because it sort of puts people a little bit off when they're downloading the mod, because the first thing they hear is sort of this like kind of empty, kind of non-impacting dialogue. It can really pull you out of the mod and make you kind of unsure as to what's to come, and I think this, combined with some of the weaker voice actors being near the beginning, is one of the major problems that the community has, at least from the feedback that I have been given. I've seen a lot of people who were really excited to try out this mod, and then they said that they didn't complete it just kind of due to how sort of weird and empty it feels at the beginning, and how the hollow sounding conversations and kind of a bit of the weaker voice acting at the start puts them off. For those who have pushed past that, ignored it, or didn't really notice though, there is another problem, and that comes from the gameplay. The planet is essentially a giant fetch quest. You're basically running around from one droid to another, guessing which droid you need to visit. Now, while I didn't have much problems with this, there was a couple of areas where I struggled and I didn't quite know where to go. I think if some of the characters were a little bit more exciting and a little bit more fun, then there was a little bit more variety there, I think that this criticism would go away pretty quickly. I think it's mostly due to the fact that you don't know who to talk to, and even when you do find them, they essentially just redirect you to someone else in kind of a boring way. There's only a few quests that are kind of interesting. There's an assassination quest, which I found kind of fun. There was one where you put together, you look through security cameras. I think that was also a pretty good one as well. But other than that, there's not a lot that stands out. It's mostly just going from point A to point B, filling off a checkbox, which is not quite exciting for some people. So that is something to keep in mind if you're planning on playing this, is it's not going to be an action-packed, thrilling mod. It's going to be a lot of walking around and talking to people who are of average interest, with a couple of gems sparkled in there who kind of make it worth it. So I'm not saying don't play the mod, I'm just saying kind of set your expectations appropriately. And then finally, there's the last issue, which is a performance issue. So there's a certain area in the game that seems to be, maybe the module is too big for the engine, or there's too many droids in a certain area, but basically, when you look in a certain direction towards the R&D facility, which is filled with a whole bunch of droids, the performance is bad. Recording this, I normally get 60 frames per second at all times, and that's because I'm V-syncing. When V-sync is off, I get hundreds of frames. However, in this area while recording, I was getting very low frame rates around 20 to 21, and literally no amount of hardware could do it, so it's probably engine related or related to the size of the module. I don't really know what could be done to fix this, but I suspect either the zone is too big or some of the droids over in the R&D facility need to be moved. I mean, I originally thought the R&D area was going to be its own separate module. I don't know if there's a limitation stopping that from happening, but I think if the R&D area could just sort of be put into its own instance, since it's so separate from everything else around it, that would probably fix this instance, although I'm sure there's some technical limitation that prevents that. But if that were possible, that'd be the solution. Otherwise, you just have to deal with it. It isn't that much of an impact when you're not actually recording the game, so it will be playable. It's just kind of annoying, and I need to bring it up because, you know, this is a review, so I gotta cover everything. So it's conclusion time. If you stuck around this long and you don't want to know what I think you should download M4-78 and play it, especially if you haven't done so already. It's 2 hours of more Knights of the Old Republic that you've never played before, and I think that itself is enough of an argument for you to go ahead, download, and try the mod. Now, it definitely has its flaws, and I don't know if you should, always visit M4, but going through it at least once, I would say, is a necessity to experience it for yourself. My hope is that some of the issues that I brought up have some possibility to be addressed at some point in time, although who knows what's going to happen. At the very least, this mod is an entire new planet that you can go visit, so go ahead and check it out. Honestly, this mod is great, and there has been a ton of hard work, sweat, tears, and passion poured into it. So I don't want to kind of be overly critical to the mod, but I think if I'm going to be telling people about it, I need to be fair. I think one of the main things this mod needs is a patch to come out that replaces some of the less well done voice acting segments with beeps and boops of droids, and I think that will solve tons of the problem that people have with this mod. Overall, this mod gets my review score of play it at least once. You gotta give it a try. It's free, it's awesome, it's more Star Wars, like I said before. Nothing else to ask for. If you're looking for installation instructions on this mod, it's fairly simple. It's just an executable. I am planning on making a video. I will try and remember to come back here and link it. I am also planning on making a video to show you how to get M4 working with other planet mods like Coruscant and have them both installed at the same time, because there's a kind of a problem with the engine that reduces the planets on the galaxy map and makes it so you can't warp to the planet effectively. So leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. This is a very long-standing mod, and it did take me 20 minutes. Oh my goodness. That's it. I gotta go. I've been Xuul, and I hope you have an excellent day.